Okay. Well, I'm going to start out on a little lighter note, just to let you all know in case you didn't know this already. Being an atheist is okay. Being an atheist and shaming religions and spirituality as silly and not real is not okay. Being a Christian is okay. Being homophobic, racist, or otherwise hateful persons in the name of Christianity is not okay. Being a reindeer is okay. Bullying and excluding another reindeer because he has a shiny red nose is not okay. So, just in case you didn't know, spirituality one-on-one, live and let live. Okay, so, I had this talk sort of lined up before the incident that happened in Paris this weekend, and Friday the 13th is interesting. And but it certainly blends in with what I was going to speak in. So and how we can be of greater service and support to this situation and the situation of our world right now, which is very interesting to say the least, and challenging for a lot of people. And of course, it's shocking to me to think that in the name of God, particular religion's God, that this is something that, where does the thou shalt not kill? Love one another, forgive one another. And really the basis and the truth of all religions are that it's not like Christianity and Hinduism and Buddhism and being a Muslim. Really, if you get to the truth, it's not all that different. It really is about love and forgiveness and service and kindness and compassion and all of those things. But there are radical, extreme people who do things that aren't okay, at least by the ego's judgment. Now, being a faithful person, I know that these souls that have been harmed or killed are okay, because the truth of all of us is changeless, formless, and eternal, and way bigger than anything that seems to be happening. But the immediacy of what's happening now, it looks pretty dreadful, and it is dreadful, and it's painful, and it's sad, without a doubt. But immediately, what's our first response? Especially if you watch the news and you hear the talking heads, immediately they want to go to the, blame somebody, attack somebody, condemn somebody, and make somebody wrong, and they reinforce that. And I'm not condoning this insane behavior, believe me. But what I've learned in my practice over the years is to jump onto that bandwagon is reinforcing more of what I don't want, because it's spreading more hatred. And interestingly enough, Facebook, I had to unfriend somebody this week, and I don't do that. And but there was a person in Florida that I don't know, to be honest with you, but his opinions and mine are different, okay, to say the least. And he made a comment about our President Obama's statement, and it wasn't nice. And he was implying that some things that weren't nice and not okay. And so I responded, I said, well, I thought it was appropriate, and I agree to disagree. Well, or I respectfully disagree is what I said. Well, that went off into I'm a New Age heathen. He wants my blood washed off his page, and it was like, oh my gosh, And then I just said, not going to go there, not engaging in this. But the mindset, and I'm not here to make him wrong either, by any means, because I think that we all have our path and it's perfect. And if I was judging him, it would be creating more fear. But I really think at these times when all of this darkness, what appears to be darkness, is coming to the surface, it's important for us to dig deep in our own hearts and be that beacon of light and love and forgiveness and support. Because it's that tipping point when the power of love is bigger than the power of hate. You know, love is going to win. Love always wins. We just have to stay there and not be tempted to go in and pointing the fingers and condemning and attacking, but offering forgiveness. Not condoning, but forgiveness means that I'm not going to engage in the energy of condemnation and blame. I'm choosing to see the light and love of God in perfect action here. And how can I be of service in this situation? So it really has to do with us. You know, I'm a believer that ultimately the buck stops with me, the buck stops with you and you and you and you and you. And it's that really what I'm here to heal, going back to the Ho'oponopono, is, you know, forgiveness in that Hawaiian tradition is that I am accepting 100% responsibility for the world I see. Course in Miracles says, you know, all forgiveness is self-forgiveness. If I even feel a need to forgive, then I've seen incorrectly. So what this is about, in my mind, at this point, you know, it's no fun anymore because I can't blame anyone for anything. You know, it's like, you know, where I used to say, there, you know, now it's like, okay, what is it in me that still needs to be examined here and forgiven and healed? Where am I still staying in judgment? And so it really is about managing the terrorism in our own mind is what it's about. And, you know, it's a practice. It's about us being willing to lay down all of my judgments about everything and then asking the Holy Spirit or the Spirit of love within me to be my vision and my guide. And Martin Luther King, you know, one of his quotes of many, he was obviously an enlightened being who walked our planet. He says, darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. And that's so true. You know, you can't fight darkness with darkness. We have to, it's dark. We bless it with that love and the light we experienced in the meditation, and the dark can't survive in that. So that's a forgiven world, is staying in that place of love no matter how hard it seems and how justified we feel at this time to be angry and upset. But it's up to us to be that presence of love. And Nelson Mandela said, if people can learn to hate, they can be taught to love. For love comes more naturally to the human heart than its opposite. So, you know, these terrorists, okay, ISIS, whatever we want to call them, I always go back to, you know, they are pure at heart. I really believe that. And they've been programmed to be insane. I mean, they've been programmed in so much fear and hatred that, you know, when you think of them as being little kids like this, and you're seeing, you know, these videos of them carrying machine guns and, you know, being trained at 2 years old to fight, you know, when you look at it that way, the innocence of that child that's been taken away, what do they grow up into? Terrorists and people who do bad things. But it's, again, a little easier if you look at them maybe as a child and focus on their innocence. And they're not, their core, the essence of each and every one of us is the same. And it's light, it's love, and that goes for them too. So am I going to focus on their hatred, or am I going to focus on their love? And the more I can do that, I am allowing and creating a space for that to come forth and manifest. And like Nelson Mandela says, it's a much more natural state for us to be in love. The other is a dream of insanity, really. You know, we all talk about, you know, I was one of the few people that did not watch Mr. Rogers when I was a kid. Who did watch Mr. Rogers? Okay, so, you know, but now it's kind of like, you know, it's a wonderful day in the neighborhood, and I sort of get the gist of what he was about, which he was a sweet, kind, loving man. You know, one of his statements here was, when I was a boy and would see scary things in the news, my mother would always say to me, look for the helpers. There are always people who are helping. And again, what am I going to focus on? according to the media, that, and I believe this to be true, that when this was all going on and people were running in the streets not having a clue what was going on a couple of nights ago, that people were opening their homes and just taking these people in, just come on in, be safe. And so, with all of the fear and the craziness that seemed to be going on, there are always helpers. And that's what we are, here to do, is to be the helpers, not the perpetrators of more fear and judgment, but be a helper. Our, prayer ministry is so powerful, and it's really a different, the paradigm of prayer that many of us may have grown up with. I did, was, you prayed, gave God your shopping list like he was Santa Claus, right? And I want this, and I want this, and I want this, and I need this, and blah, blah, blah. And the prayer is now, the true prayer is, thy will be done. And when someone makes a request, be it for relationships or financial reasons or sickness or whatever, rather than praying, focusing on the cancer or the poverty, it's focusing on seeing perfection come forth. So I'm going to allow myself to see each and every person requesting prayer as healed and whole. And that's the most powerful prayer we can offer. Not the shopping list is already just reinforcing the belief that I'm in lack in some way in my life. True prayer is focusing on the knowing that we already are whole and complete. And then we can remember that. Well, Ellen and I, we have something that we watch on TV occasionally, and that's Jim Bakker. I don't know, there's something about it, I will admit it, but he's a character, I tell you. And I mean, when you look back when he and Tammy Faye came out, 30, 40 years ago, they were just wholesome and, ready to spread the gospel and just love of God. And then they maybe got a little carried away and did some things they shouldn't have done. And, she ran out of mascara or whatever. And, it's, I really grew to love her too. She really turned into a really cool person too. So, but he, went to prison, as you know, and probably much to his own mistakes put him there. Doesn't matter, but he was in prison, and according to him the other day, he said he had a lot of resentment because a lot of his friends let him down, threw him under the bus, betrayed him. He was angry, and that God, came to him. God talks to him all the time. I mean, that's cool. And God told him that you will not be released from prison until you forgive each and every person you're holding a grievance towards. And, I look at this twofold. I look at it as his literal experience of that, because he was saying in his literal experience, he was in prison. He had a lot of grievances, and he felt they were justified. But he knew that he had to go through each of those situations with each of those people and really open his heart and offer that olive branch. Well, we also have, the same concept of our own mind, the prison in our own minds. And until we offer full forgiveness to everybody, we're going to be in our own prison. It is a prison, literally. So I thought that was, a great analogy of his literal truth, but it's something that we can all take into consideration. And it's, I notice now, where in the past, remember, did any of y'all go to that Heritage USA over in Charlotte? I think it was in Charlotte. Yeah, it was in Charlotte. It was that complex that he and Tammy Faye and that ministry built. I mean, it was grand. It was beautiful. And they had Christmas lights and that would go for a mile, and it was beautiful. And then you'd go into this hotel, and I think it's a ghost town now. But, it's literally. And but anyway, what's so interesting is so much of their emphasis was on, the riches of God and And I'm by no means opposed to wealth and prosperity and having a nice house if you want it and whatever. That's all well and good. But if that's the focus, then I think, if we put that before the Spirit of God, we're missing something. So now I've come to the point of, I really don't know what I want. I've manifested a lot of really cool things in my life, and I'm grateful for that. But now it's just like, okay, Spirit, I'm surrendering. I know that my will and God's will are one in truth. And if I can just open up to that, greater things than I could ever imagine happened. And I think that our focus becomes more on community, more on love and forgiveness, and we aren't so externally oriented anymore. We're more focused on love and oneness and connectedness and healing. But we have to be willing to lay down all of our grievances. And so Ramtha, I found this is a great quote, because all of these ideas that I'm sharing here today are about us becoming unlimited, enlightened, remembering who we are in truth. And Ramtha says to become unlimited is to be without fear, without guilt, without hate, without bitterness. To become unlimited means you can love no matter what you see before you. That is becoming God. And I thought that was so powerful. But bitterness, hate, judgment, fear are all veils, blocks to knowing that true love. And if we want to become, God, which we all are created, this isn't blasphemous because we've been told we're created in the likeness and image of God. We are that. We are love. But if we're holding grievances and hatred and bitterness, you might as well forget about it. It's not going to be in your realm of awareness. It's just not. So we may want to consider this. And then to support this, Eckhart Tolle, who I think is an amazing being in many ways, he's a little cutie. And I just love his little giggles. And anyway, he talks about surrender, which I spoke of a minute ago, and he goes to say, until you practice surrender, the spiritual dimension is something you read about, talk about, get excited about, write books about, think about, believe in or don't, as the case may be. Not until you surrender does it become a living reality in your life. And I see that too. It's about living the message. Eventually, workshops are fun, readings are fun, books are fun. Books are fun. And buy all you want. And but it's all, those are all good support systems. But I think that, if we could just say, okay, I surrender, we'll be led to the perfect book or the perfect reading or the perfect class that suits us or not. And because it is about, union, oneness with God, and recognizing that. A few weeks ago, I don't know if you all keep up with the Parliament of World's Religions. It's an international conference where all the religions come together in an interfaith spirit to share their message, their common message, and also how can they use that common message to be of greater service to the world. And it's a wonderful conference, and they have it all over the world. This year, last month, it just happened to be in Salt Lake City, Utah. And, they had, I don't know if the Dalai Lama was there this year, but he usually is. But a lot of spiritual leaders are there, and all the religions are represented, all in the spirit of peace. Well, Marianne Williamson spoke there, and, she's great. And her talk I watched, and I was like, wow, that took some to say that. Because, she'll put it out there, and she's awesome in her presentation. But she talked about being a free thinker. And I think for us to get to this place of enlightenment, we have to pay attention to what she says. And it's passionate, free-thinking women raise passionate, free-thinking children. And passionate, free-thinking children grow up to be passionate, free-thinking adults. And passionate, free-thinking adults are very difficult to manipulate and almost impossible to control. And I think that's so true. And I don't, it sounds like manipulate and control, But, we've given away our free thinking to some degree. We've just sort of gotten into this system of the education system, maybe the church or not going to church, and just society in general. And instead of being a free thinker, we just say, okay, well, tell me what to do, where to go, who to talk to, whatever, what to eat. I was listening to some show in the morning of caffeine is the worst drug in the world. I heard that on my way over this morning. Yikes. Okay, so I guess we're all heathens in here. No more coffee. No more coffee on Sunday. But so free thinking is necessary for us to really have this full experience, really being able to tune in and listen to that inner voice. Because if we're too busy operating on the past and programs, we're not able to tune into that. So I think that, and when we are free thinkers, we are not easy to control and manipulate. And we can stand on our own. But when we plug into the voice of God, we are living in the greatest degree of love, without a doubt. Jimmy Carter, let me just share this with you here, because Jimmy Carter, I thought this was so cute. It says, he's been dealing with cancer, and it said, you may be a badass, but you will never be 91-year-old battling cancer while building homes for the needy badass. So I thought that was so great. And just about this free thinking versus programming. How much do we hear about from Christians about how homosexuality is a sin, and it's terrible, and it's, according to who you watch, it is why our world is going down fast. And Jimmy goes on to say, and he's a Baptist Sunday school teacher, by the way, homosexuality was well known in the ancient world, well before Christ was born. And Jesus never said a word about homosexuality. In all of his teachings about multiple things, he never said gay people should be condemned. But again, that's the truth. But you're not a free thinker, you're allowing yourself to be programmed by other people's beliefs and other people's judgments and hatred, for lack of a better word. And so it's really about what people, and I'm sure that you all have been asked this question, some of you anyway, are you a Christian? That's it. And I just say yes. And then sometimes I'll say, well, maybe not in your understanding of what a Christian is, but in mine, yes. Because, the whole idea of, I read a quote. Yes, we put the Christ back in Christmas. How often do we hear that? But someone said, how about putting the Christ back in Christians? And so we had and I'm going to expand on that in a minute. But in our ministry class on Monday, Ben, we have such great conversations, and Ben had shared a quote from a book he was reading, and it says, Christianity isn't a failure, it just hasn't been tried yet. And that's and that's a British guy. That's why you like that, Terry. British writer, C.K. Chesterton. Yeah, and anyway, but I think that's so true. Christianity really hasn't been tried yet, because what is it? It's really about being, Jesus the Christ, Buddha the Christ, Krishna the Christ, Ellen the Christ, Terry the Christ. All of us are that. And so it's not about a particular group of people having domain over that. It's about each and every one of us living from that Christ perspective. And that Christ, the Christ, Charlotte the Christ and Betty the Christ, or whoever, is about me tuning into that voice of God and living from that space, not from a place of fear. So in that respect, we are all, Christians if we choose to be. But again, it's up to us to, that's another program that we've been maybe misled down the road. Not to blame, not to criticize, not to condemn. And I'd like to just, this is a time in our world that appears very fearful and unstable. And for us to be Christians and live, as the best we can, I think it's up to us to go back to that willingness, as Ramtha shared and other ideas I shared, is we have to be willing to heal the hatred in our own hearts. Look at the terrorism in our own mind. Where am I still holding a grievance? That's the greatest gift that we can offer to the world today, is by being that presence of peace, walking in that Christ energy and living from that place. And I would say right now, the world needs us a lot. So why don't we all just really take this into our heart and just blast everyone, everywhere with the most love we possibly can. And through that, peace and love will prevail on earth. And so it is. Namaste.